The tale is a familiar one. An unassuming youth, through no fault of their own, is caught up in a whirlwind of adventure and tasked with accomplishing something that seems impossibly beyond them. Yet through their courage and determination, the youth is able to find the means to overcome incredible odds and save a princess, a people, even an entire world. The story is so common that we've pretty much just covered the basic plot for at least half of the titles of several genres of storytelling, and probably a quarter of every other one. We've heard it so often that it's very easy to wonder why this hasn't bored everyone to death yet. But it's the way the story is told, from the atmosphere to the characters, that separates these stories from one another. Some can just be a feel-good story, told to entertain and amuse. Others, meanwhile, are more memorable and stay with listeners for a time, while others still have a certain passion and infuse a sense of wonder and adventure to the point that the tale can truly be called a legend. Despite the immense difficulty of the adventure of Link and its radical change from the original game, the second installment of The Legend of Zelda was still very popular. Those skillful enough to see the journey to the end were eager for a new challenge, while those who weren't so gifted still wanted another chance to explore and see just what Hyrule had to offer them. Just like before, Nintendo immediately began development for another Zelda title, but the following year, instead of a new game, the project was moved to be released on what would become the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. As the console was still very much in development itself, it meant prospective adventurers had to exercise a bit more patience. It would be 4 years before their desires were met, but as they would find very quickly, this game would be well worth the wait. The SNES was a dominant system in its time, producing multiple games that received critical acclaim and have withstood the test of time as paragons of their respective genres. Several of Nintendo's most popular series had their start in this system, while others have an installment in this era that is arguably the best that series has ever produced. The Legend of Zelda is no different. With increased resources and improved technology, special care was taken to make sure it was as great a game as it could possibly be. And it starts as soon as you turn it on. The opening fanfare has become one of the more recognizable pieces of music in the Zelda collection. And while you are free to start your game immediately, a little patience introduces you to a world that suddenly became larger than you thought possible. The Kingdom of Hyrule, grand by itself in numerous ways, attracted the attention of many an adventurer due to tales of a gateway to a hidden golden land. What lay inside was anyone's guess, but legend had it that the power contained therein would grant the wish of whoever touched it. What they didn't know was that this power would only obey the first one to touch it, and someone finally did. One day, an immense evil power began to flow from the Golden Land. To prevent its spread, the king ordered 7 wise men to create a seal that would cut off the Golden Land from the rest of the world. That seal remained for generations, until one day a wizard by the name of Aghanim came and usurped the authority of the king. Seeking out descendants of the wise men, Aghanim imprisoned 7 maidens, including the Princess Zelda, and one by one cast a spell upon them that banished them to an unknown place. When Zelda was all that remained, she cried in desperation for someone, anyone, to come to the rescue. With that thrilling introduction, you are catapulted into the action of the game. On a stormy night with nothing but a stern word from your uncle and a lantern, you set out to find and liberate Zelda. With the bulk of Hyrule closed off to you, you're forced to head straight to Hyrule Castle and immediately begin the rescue operation. As you obtain your sword and shield and begin to sneak towards the dungeon, the first enemies seem like the same wandering foes from the first game, but then you find that some will fight back. As inexperienced as you are, you learn quickly that not every enemy has to be fought face to face. Your environment is immediately a useful asset, either in providing pots as weapons, or just pushing your enemies off the edge, which is still one of the funniest things I've seen in a video game. As you move through what can be called a very simple level in the game, you're actually being given a tutorial for the many dungeons to follow. You get a map, defeat particular enemies to open doors, use a key, obtain a treasure. You even get to take down a kind of boss before getting the key to Zelda's cell. After rescuing the princess and escaping through the sewers, you're given the task of saving Hyrule from the wizard's plot. But instead of a vague, go save the world mission that the NES titles had you go on, you actually have directions, people who can help, and you're even told your best chance of success, a legendary blade sleeping in the forest. With that, you are once again free to explore Hyrule in whatever way you see fit. But unlike the original Zelda, you now have a relatively detailed map and a marker showing you where you eventually need to go. This eliminates the panic from feeling hopelessly lost, and combined with the iconic overworld theme, instead instills a feeling of adventure and excitement. You know the journey will be long, and, as you are reminded almost as soon as you leave the sanctuary, it will be full of enemies, but you already know where to go and what to do. Just follow your map, and you'll be fine. That doesn't mean that the thrill of exploration is gone, however. Despite almost always having destinations labeled on your map, the game encourages you to wander off the beaten path and discover Hyrule's many secrets. As you first wander Kakariko in search of the Elder, you meet villagers with bits of information that can help you in many ways later on in the game, and very few of them have to do with the main plot. Hints for side events are nearly everywhere as long as you're willing to look for and remember them. As you continue on through the game, you discover these hints, as well as secrets of your own, boosting your health, your funds, and even finding items that prove indispensable. It was A Link to the Past that brought item use into its prominent position in the Zelda formula. One look at the item screen at the beginning of the game is enough to tell you that you are going to have a lot of tools at your disposal. As you begin to fill up that inventory, it's amazing to see the broad spectrum of items you can use. Some are used to help defeat enemies, some provide recovery or defense, while others are there just to help you get through previously inaccessible areas. As you find more items and gain more skill, you start to feel like you can take on anything that comes your way. Well, maybe not anything. A Link to the Past also provided some of the many items that have become our favorites. The spring-loaded hookshot, allowing us to cross huge gaps. The mad-dashing Pegasus boots, giving us the best method of transportation we could ask for. The triple-threat spells of Ether, Quake, and Bombos, whose destructive force has yet to be replicated. And of course, the solitary blade that has defined the Zelda series just as much as Link and the Triforce has. While many fondly remember a similar moment in Ocarina of Time, nothing quite compares to the mystery and the wonder of wandering through a fog-covered forest and discovering the enshrined sword. All your trials accomplished, you present the pendants of virtue and earn the right to draw forth the legendary Master Sword for the first time. The range of emotions the game puts you through is quite impressive, from the tense, rain-drenched scene at the beginning of the game to the intimidation of fighting an enormous boss. But nothing laid down the shock value more than your first time up Death Mountain. Halfway up, you find your path to the Tower of Hera blocked by an impassable cliff. The only thing that offers any kind of help is a rippling blue tile. You step onto it and... what in the world? If the weird warping effect and color change didn't startle you, you were certainly stunned by your sudden transformation into a small, pink bunny. All of a sudden, the terror of not knowing where you are or what's going on has returned in full force. Your map shows something that looks very similar to Hyrule, and yet is completely different. A quick inquiry of some nearby residents reveals this to be the legendary Golden Land, but one that had been twisted to form a dangerous dark world. While the dichotomy of twin worlds is a common theme in the Zelda franchise, from the simple overworld labyrinth settings of the original game to the otherworldly takeover in Twilight Princess, none of them brought such a shock as A Link to the Past. The sudden transportation and minimal explanation, combined with the helplessness of your bunny form, brings such astonishment that it takes a bit of time before you regain your bearings and realize you were just recently given a way back to Hyrule. The reveal of the Dark World brings to light the true scope of your quest. Before this, you were taken in by the epic music, the bright colors, and the assurance that from the moment you left the princess, you had a pretty good idea what you were doing. You enjoyed the exploration, and although some enemies proved difficult, you were still able to come out on top with no real difficulty. Now, just when you thought you had seen everything Hyrule had to offer, you find you're not even halfway there. The Tower of Hera cements this with instructions regarding the Dark World, and even a specialized item designed to prevent your bunny transformation when you return. And you know that you will return, because it's obvious that you still have a long way to go. The way you return, however, is a bit more dramatic, and in a way it brings the entire plot of the game full circle. After obtaining the Master Sword, another desperate cry from Zelda alerts you to her immediate recapture. Upon finding her return to Hyrule Castle, you're set to storm that castle, sword drawn and shining, if not blazing with the return of the sword beam. Yet, despite your gallant efforts, you're forced to watch as Agana makes Zelda disappear right in front of you. As you win your first match of energy tennis, the wizard hopes to abandon you in the Dark World. The resulting spell brings you to the center of the Golden Land and the beginning of the next phase of your adventure. From here, you're charged with not just saving Zelda, but with stopping a plot of world domination from the thief who started it all, Ganon. It is as epic a quest as you could ask for. Despite the Dark World being little more than an overlay of the original map, the music, enemies, and objective make it seem like you're on an entirely new adventure. You now have 7 dungeons to conquer before you can face Ganon, each one with its own distinct feel, puzzles, and often gigantic boss to take down. While it's certainly a daunting task, it isn't long before you're simply lost in the adventure, learning the intricacies of the light and dark world relationship, and eventually using it to your advantage. As you begin clearing dungeons and saving maidens, you learn not just about the Triforce and the Golden Land, but about a prophecy concerning a hero who must emerge whenever darkness threatens. And when you finally rescue Zelda again, it's clear to both her and you that you are the fulfillment of that prophecy, destined to save Hyrule and the world. With that confidence, you charge headlong into Ganon's tower. To even gain access to the upper floors requires going through a labyrinth of puzzles and enemies, and the tower goes on for so long, you really start to wonder if it's ever going to end. Then finally, you reach the top level and have a rematch with the Wizard Agana, who throws everything he has at you. A hectic battle to be sure, but one that doesn't really surprise you until you think victory is yours. Agana falls, but you can only stare as Ganon rises from his fallen body and flees to the Great Pyramid you started from. Here, Ganon makes his stand, and the hero and the Demon King once again battle for the Triforce. For only by claiming it can you save Hyrule and restore everything to its people. And in fact, everything is restored. In what is a surprisingly rare occurrence in The Legend of Zelda, you get to see firsthand what power the Triforce can have on the world. At the same time, you get to revisit the land you explored and the people you met and helped along the way. The montage reminds you of the long journey you had, and especially the impact you were able to make on others' lives. Those who were lost were found. Those who were ill were healed. Even those who had died were revived. That kind of conclusion is much more satisfying than just a "the end" screen, because it makes you feel as if you actually accomplished something worthwhile. Not only was the journey fun and challenging, but you were able to find meaning in your quest, and found something to fight for. A princess and a people who you grew to care for and wanted to help. The original title for this game is The Legend of Zelda: Triforce of the Gods, and it's very obvious why that title would be used. After all, the entire game is focused on the Triforce. But in order to avoid controversy, when it was released in North America, the name was changed to A Link to the Past. Aside from the obvious name connection to our main character, the game itself repeatedly makes references to an ancient people known as the Hylia, from whom many of your items, including the Master Sword, came. But even beyond that, As we moved on to different games set in that past, we can see how the Link from this game exemplifies so well the skill and courage needed of a hero, and is the literal link to great heroes past. And although we get to experience those past journeys in greater depth with better technology, this journey still perfectly captures the grandeur and the excitement of a lone warrior going on a quest and coming home victorious. When I first played A Link to the Past, I was entranced by its immense world and the adventure it set me on. Now, more than 20 years later, that excitement has yet to diminish. Despite the impressive and even revolutionary sequels that followed, A Link to the Past is still near the top, if not at the top, of the Zelda universe, and is still the standard by which the others are held to. It's impressive that only after 3 tries, Nintendo was able to pin down so perfectly what this series was about and how it would be played for years to come. Its gameplay, its story, and its overall design are exactly what was needed for the series and the system it was made for. When people ask, which Zelda game should I start with, you can get several different answers, depending on who you ask. Many recommend their favorite title, hoping to instill the joy they have for the games immediately to their friends. Some people insist you should start at the beginning, to really get a feel for where the Zelda franchise has gone. While none of these are particularly wrong, my recommendation for the best starting point will always be A Link to the Past. For its amazing gameplay, its perfect setup of Hyrule and everything contained therein, and a true taste of what it's like to set out on an adventure for Zelda and the Triforce. Thanks everyone for coming with me on this in-depth look at A Link to the Past. There's so much that can be talked about in this game, so please comment some of your favorite moments, items, and bosses. If you'd like to see my journey through this installment of the series, you can check out my playthrough in the description below. And if you're new to this series, you can find links to my videos on the first 2 Zelda titles as well. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe and you'll know when my latest videos are out. Join me next time as we sail away from the SNES and Hyrule completely and explore Koholint Island and the world of dreams in The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. See you next time!